We were supposed to do this one live at Twin Cities Pride, but Minnesota weather had other plans. So instead of a live audience conversation, I'm bringing the heart of the show here. It's going to be about money, identity, optionality, and what it takes to build a financial life that can hold the truth of who you are. Because money is not just math. Money is memory, it's safety, it's family, it's identity, and it's a tool as well as choice. And before we can talk about saving, investing, debt, spending, or building wealth, we have to start with a deeper question. What relationship with money are you actually operating from? Today, I'm going to walk through your money story, your wealth identity, your wealth capacity, and then the soul framework as a structure for building a sustainable financial future. No shame, no perfection, just clarity, capacity, and choices. Let's build a life that can hold the truth of who you are.
Yeah. So they might go
Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO of Do Different Better and your wealth and money co-pilot. We were supposed to do this one live from the Twin Cities Pride, but Minnesota's weather had other plans. So instead of having this live conversation, we're going to be bringing this show to you now. If you're new to the show, this episode is going to be a great recap of all the episodes from the first half of the year. So if you hear something that hits you, check out previous episodes wherever you're listening to the show. But today I'm talking about money, identity, and optionality because freedom isn't just a slogan. It's also a structure. It's cash flow, boundaries, safety, ownership, care, and the ability to make decisions without being in a panic. Optionality is something you're going to hear me talk about a lot, not only today, but on previous episodes, because optionality is the ability to choose without your life collapsing. It's choices like being able to leave that job that you hate, saying no to family pressures or whatever somebody is telling you to do, taking care of your health. It's supporting your chosen family. It's about moving safely, investing for your future. Maybe it's starting over, loving who you are without financial dependence, trapping you into a life of not being happy or not feeling like you have any freedom. Freedom is not just a feeling, it's a financial structure that has some level of predictability in it. People often talk about freedom emotionally, but freedom also requires system. So here I'm going to talk about my having money with soul. And soul can be SOUL, but I'm going to be talking about soul, SOLE. The S stands for stability. And that's thinking about, can I survive with as little disruption as possible? The O is optionality. Can I make choices without feeling like I am panicking? The L is for leveraging. Do I own anything that actually gives me that power? And the E is embodiment. Does my money reflect my actual values and how I want to live a life and how I want my life reflected and designed? For communities that have had to fight for safety, belonging, dignity, legal recognition, money is not just personal finance. Money is protection. Money is mobility. Money is care. Money can position you to live 10 toes down with security. It gives you the chance to move out of that neighborhood that's not making you feel safe or welcome. It's the ability to move states or change your kid's school if you need to. That is what optionality brings to your life. So you might be thinking, why is soul important to bring to your money journey? It's because having a framework provides a structure that is not driven by emotion, but supports your financial trauma by offering you a lens that objectively calms your nervous system. Because your nervous system is what makes you have crazy decisions that get you into desperate situations. But when your nervous system is calm, that's when you can make better decisions all around, particularly money decisions. And one more thing, money is a tool, much like a hammer. It's not inherently good or bad. Whether it's a hammer or it's money, they both can be used to build, but they also can both cause destruction. It's all in how you decide to use it. And how you decide to use it often comes from what were the messages, what were the stories, what are you bringing to the conversation, and what is your relationship to money? To make a finer point, I want to be clear. High income is not the same as freedom. So just because you have a high income does not necessarily mean you are free. Being loved is not the same as being financially safe. Having a chosen family is beautiful, but it also needs boundaries. And values aligned spending is not the same as pressure spending. Optionality is built through small systems before a crisis hits, and systems that are running fairly on autopilot. Now, here's a quick question. Who of you listening to the show has ever stayed too long in a job? Maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was a living situation, or perhaps it was a financial commitment because money made leaving so complicated. We have all been there, including myself. I share lots of stories about where I have found myself in situations that I didn't necessarily want to be in, and I had to figure a way out. And creating optionality in your life allows those instances to happen a lot less frequently. And when they do happen, you're able to maneuver in a way that doesn't make you feel trapped. This is why optionality matters and is so important. So, let's talk about where your financial freedom might be leaking. Here's where I'm going to talk about my 4-part optionality audit. So you don't need pen and paper. You can just be listening to this. So if you're taking a walk or you're in the car, or maybe you're listening to this while you're doing some mindless activity, that's going to be fine. You're just going to listen and think about, do any of these land for you? The point of this is to think about, where is your optionality leaking? Because before we can think about building stability, we want to make a connection to, where am I actually falling down? Again, I want you to think about this without judgment. I don't want you to feel shame. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to start flogging yourself because of something hits you. But this is information. We need to understand where you're starting so that we can understand where we want to start tinkering to fix it and move you in a different direction. So, the 4 optionalities that you want to think about, here's number 1. The first is cash optionality. And here are some questions. Do I have enough cash to handle life without immediately using debt? So, some questions you might want to answer that will help you get to that answer is, do I know what my baseline is? Do I even know what a baseline is? And I've covered that in previous episodes. Do I have a buffer? Do I have any flex fund money for an opportunity or a transition that may come up, especially if I might need to do that immediately? Number 2, time optionality, because time is a resource. It is a valuable resource that is not renewable. We can't make more time. So we really want to understand, how are we spending our time? Now, let me be clear. This is not about, you're not allowed to take vacations. It's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, can you take the time to take a vacation, right? Because the way that your life's set up, it allows you to be able to go and do the things that you enjoy, not just the things that you have to do. So time optionality is, does my calendar belong to me, or is it fully owned by obligations? To get the answer to that, you may think about, am I overcommitted? This is a big one, particularly with women. We overcommit and we think it's under the guise of love, or we think it's under the guise of wanting to help, or maybe be driven by some spirituality, right? And so then we end up on the floor. We end up in bed. We end up hospitalized because we have a whole bunch of health problems that are related to being overcommitted. Another way to think about this is, am I buying convenience because my life is structurally overloaded? Am I using Instacart and telling myself that, oh, I can spend more time in my business, or I can spend more time doing something else, but I'm still overloaded, right? I know that one. I've had to come to terms with that one a couple of years ago. Another way to think about this is, what do I do if I could reclaim 5 more hours a week? Would I pack it with more work, or would I pack it with actually spending time with my partner, with my family? And now, optionality number 3, that is relationship optionality. And here we want to ask, can I say no without losing love, belonging, or safety? So some of the questions that might lead you to the answer are, am I the family CFO, chief financial officer? Am I funding patterns of other people instead of outcomes? Do my romantic, my business, my family, and professional relationships expand or shrink my choices? And the last one is identity optionality. And here I want you to think about, am I allowed to become the next version of myself? Am I in a situation, whether once again it be work, professional, familial, spiritual? And so some framing for that is, what version of me am I financially maintaining because it makes other people feel more comfortable? That's a big one. What identity am I still paying for? Am I paying for someone else's bad decision making? Am I paying for because I feel that there's some kind of obligations? And sometimes there are familial obligations, right? You may have a sick parent, or you are the guardian of somebody who requires a lot of care. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when somebody is actually continuously making poor choices and you continue to fund those poor choices. Or where am I spending to prove that I'm actually okay or that I'm worthy? That also can be a big one. Do you feel the most financially constrained right now? Is it cash? Is it your time? Is it your relationships? Or is it your identity? I really want you to let that settle and think about listening to your body. Where are you feeling it in your body? Are you feeling a tightness in your chest? Are you feeling your hands getting a little sweaty? Are you feeling a little tingle in your toes? If any of those things are happening and you're having struggling with answer any of these questions, there's definitely something there that you can want to consider looking at. While people think about that, I want to give you some examples of what that looks like. You want to start thinking about, hey, you know what? I really don't like this job, but I really don't have an out. I don't know what I would do if I left this job. I can't stand my boss. Or maybe it's a partner situation. I'm staying in this relationship because I don't have a way to leave. Can't leave to get an apartment. I've been in that situation. I've stayed in a relationship. However, that was probably the second most activating moment in my money journey. Was I have got to have a different relationship with money so that I can set up a system and a plan to be able to financially leave this situation, or be able to financially take care of myself in order to leave this situation. So again, I don't want you to hear judgment in anything that I'm saying. And I really want to invite you to not judge yourself. This is really finding out what's happening so that we know where to come and take care of it. Where do we start to build the system that's actually going to take care of it? So we've talked about really understanding where our money relationship is coming from. And coming up, I'm now going to be talking about the person. How do we take that and really think about who is the human behind the money, right? So now that we kind of have a better understanding of what's feeding us or what's driving us, now we want to understand, so where are we? What's the step ladder? And How do we move into our fullest self that is aligned with our money? You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. You're listening to the show on AM 950. If you found us on Spotify or iTunes, this is great. Make sure you share this episode and don't forget to hit me up on Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. If you've got a question or if there's somebody you'd like me to interview, make sure you send me a DM. But for now, I will see you after the break.
Yeah. So they might go
Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. So glad to have you here. This has been such a great time right now. We really wanted to be coming from the Twin Cities Pride show, but that's okay. We're here now and we're doing this show. So we're going to have some of the themes that you might hear or see in Pride. But this show is really about this culmination of all the episodes from the first half of the year. And so if you're listening for the first time, this is a great place for you to drop in to kind of understand what's the show all about and what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year. But in specifically, we're in this particular segment, we're now going to get into the person behind the plan. We're going to be talking about wealth identity and wealth capacity. So before the break, I talked about my soul, SOLE, the soul of your money. And soul is the framework to think about money without shame and with more objectivity. And soul stands for stability, optionality, leverage, and embodiment. And we named this big idea that freedom is not just a feeling. Freedom actually needs a financial structure, whatever that financial freedom looks like to you. Maybe financial freedom to you is living in a yurt in Tibet. Great. That's fine, right? Or maybe your goal is you want to live in a different country every year. For a long time, that was my goal. I wanted to live in a different country every year. This was also pre-internet, so it was a lot harder then than it is now. But whatever your dream is, whatever the life that you want to design is, we need to build a financial structure to make sure that can happen and you can do it well. So here is where I want us to slow down, because before we can discuss what to do with your money, we need to consider the person who's actually managing your money. That is you. That is the part of that financial advice often skips all the time. Everyone just wants to leap into build this goal, build a new budget. But what people are not saying is, what people are telling you is, hey, you need to save more. You need to spend less. You need to invest sooner. You need to pay off your debts. You need these big money goals. You need to make more money. You need to start a budget. But what if you don't know how? What if you have this big major block? All of those things are super, super useful. But if we don't understand the person behind the plan will never hold up. It will not be sustainable. Does that sound like you? You've tried budgeting, you've tried making a goal every New Year's, or maybe on your birthday, you're like, this time it's going to be different, and nothing ever changes. And the reason for that is because money behavior is not just math. Money behavior is memory. Money behavior is identity. Money behavior is pressure. And money behavior is family as well as a sense of belonging. Money behavior is safety. But money behavior is also fear. It can also be ambition. Money behavior is what you learned you had to do to survive, to belong, to prove, to protect, to hide, to perform, and to just be. So, if you've ever wondered, why do I know better but still do a thing? Then this segment is for you. Welcome. because knowing better is not the same as being resourced enough to do better. And that is why the first part of this year, we have really not just been talking about money moves. They've been we've been building the internal operating system to hold money and particularly wealth, if that's your goal, differently. So in this segment, I want to connect three layers: your relationship with money, which is your identity, your wealth identity, your wealth capacity, because those are the baseline before you even build a sustainable financial structure with soul, SOLE. Let's start with your relationship with money. Before we talk about what money should do, we need to ask ourselves a question. What has money meant to us? For some of us, money means safety. I know for me, I've told you all many times about how I've grown up. I grew up very financially insecure. There was not enough money. I had been evicted. My family, I should say, had been evicted several times as a young person. And so that began to shape a very high insecurity around money. Money was always talked about from a scarcity perspective. But I did also have this juxtaposition of my grandmother, who, while she didn't have a lot of money, came with an abundance mindset. So growing up with these two different, like diametrically opposed positions, really kind of made me feel like a pinball machine as it related to my relationship with money. If there was enough money, people will feel calmer. The house is calmer, choices opened up, the lights stayed on, the stress went down. For others like me, money means conflict. Money means arguments, silence, tension, maybe secrets. Somebody's always mad, or there's this low level aggression. Somebody is ashamed or causing shame, and somebody is being blamed. For some of us, money meant status. Money was how people showed, hey, I've made it. They have the car, they have the clothes, they have the house, they live in the right neighborhood, they're at the right school, they're going on trips, they're at the right tables, and they have the right title. As someone who went to a private Catholic school, I remember distinctly going from fifth grade to sixth grade. I mean, sorry, yeah, fifth grade to sixth grade. And it was the time when the school went from saddle shoes or Oxford shoes. Some of you are not old enough to remember what those are, but they're the black and white shoes. And we got to now wear any kind of shoes that we wanted. And I remember the switch that happened and the status structure that began based on what shoes people were wearing. It was crazy. And it really created a lot of insecurity amongst the kids because they were kids who had money. They came from families that had businesses. We had one gal, her family owned a restaurant that like everybody knew at the school. It was a famous restaurant in Hollywood. And so of course she always had nice things. She always had a beautiful iron pressed uniform, while some of us were not looking as sharp, right? So all of those tensions started to show up as an adult, and me even as a teenager, on my relationship with money. For some of us, money means control. Whoever had the money made the decisions. Whoever needed money had to explain, shrink, ask, justify, or just take it. For some of us, money means love. If you love people, you gave. You covered their expenses. You stretched yourself, maybe. You helped, and you made it work. You just make it work, no matter what the impact to you, financially, spiritually, physically. For some of us, money means shame. There was never enough, right? And that was for us, right? But you were not supposed to talk about it. Or if you felt behind or if you felt embarrassed, that also was not something you talked about, and no one cared. And for some of us, money means survival. Money was not just abstraction. Money was food, rent, transportation, medicine, safety, and whether tomorrow you were going to actually be okay. But for some of us, money meant freedom. It meant the ability to leave, to choose, to rest, to move, to say no, to live honestly, to stop having to explain. So here is a line I want you to hold. Your bank account has numbers, but your nervous system has receipts. It remembers. It has a long record, and that's bringing into today of how you think and manage and even spend your money. That means your financial behavior is not just coming from a spreadsheet. It's coming from the story that your body remembers all the way down to your first memory of money. Some people overspend because money finally feels available. It's not always irresponsibility. Sometimes it's, I went without for so long and now I want proof that I do not have to have a life like that anymore. I remember saying those words specifically. Some people oversave because safety never feels secure. I've had partners like that. It's not always a discipline because sometimes it's a fear dressed up as responsibility. And some people overgive because love and financial ability and financial availability all got tangled up. The emotional equation became, if I can help, I should help. If I say no, I am selfish or a bad person. If I have more, I owe more to other people. Some people avoid money because money feels like conflict, or that was the association they learned very early on. Looking at accounts, opening bills, checking balances, making calls, asking questions, none of that feels neutral. It all feels loaded. I'm not going to call the bank. I'm not going to look at my bank statement because that's going to bring up something in me or bring up something in my relationship that now has to be explained. And when it gets explained, I get shamed or whatever your communication cycle is. Now, some people over optimize because uncertainty feels unsafe. They're not just trying to get the best return, they're also trying to eliminate the absolute possibility of any regret, which is not realistic. So, before we judge behavior, we need to understand these relationships. That's the first layer. So, here are some questions you can ask yourself. When money shows up, what feeling shows up first? Is it relief? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it excitement? Is it pressure? Is it comfort? Is it control? Is it possibilities? Is it obligation? Is it avoidance? You're just trying to avoid it altogether. Whatever came up, again, this is data, but it is also not a life sentence. We can make a change. Now, let's go to the next layer. The next layer is your wealth identity. This is your relationship telling us the story. Your wealth identity tells us the role you tend to play under stress because money, pressure, family, ambition, and fear all show up at the same time. And most of us become very predictable in how we deal with it. Not because we're broken, just because as humans we have patterns. So, let's recap the four wealth identity types that we've been building. So, first is the builder. The builder wants structure. The builder wants systems, plans, order, progress, clarity, frameworks, spreadsheets, folders, apps, dashboards, and sense that there is some kind of map. This is part of their gift. But builders often are the people that take chaos and turn them into a plan. They are actually able to stabilize a household. They can organize a business. You want those people around, right? They can map out the path. I happen to be one of those people, right? They can think long term, but their risk is actually overbuilding. I was talking to one of my friends last night and she was telling me, yes, that is my Achilles heel, right? The builder can make a system so complex that they don't even use it. The builder can wait for the perfect budget, the perfect app, the perfect financial advisor, the perfect account, the perfect launch plan, the perfect version of themselves before they actually make any moves. The builder can turn a money goal into a 17-tab spreadsheet and a spiritual crisis. Again, being called to the front of the room. I'm that girl and still working on it, right? So I will ask the questions like, is this structure helping me to act, or is it looking for me to avoid? Right. So being honest with myself of like, am I building more structure so that I'm not actually taking any action? Because your freedom move may not be another system. It might be choosing a very simple system and letting that be enough. And that's something I'm even learning. The second wealth identity is the caretaker. The caretaker uses money to protect, to support, to rescue, to make sure there's inclusion, to repair, and keep people okay. My partner does this for a long time. We both have grown children. And when I say grown, we're talking like kids in their 30s. And I remember we actually got into a small argument because I was like, why are we giving grown children $300 as Christmas gifts? That to me seems ridiculous. These are humans. These are humans who have their own homes. These are humans who have their own families. They do not. But for my partner, this was really about showing love, right? It was about being able to show that I can buy these things. And because I can buy these things and give them to you, I love you. And I'm like, no, that's not how any of this works, right? So, really thinking about, am I leveraging money? Is it being used as a weapon, or is it being used as a demonstration to show love, right? Because that's what we were taught. You spend money on people, that's how you show love. Well, I'm going to invite you to check that out. Is that something you've put on yourself, or is that really how the people in your life really feel, right? Now, let's move on to the caretaker. The caretaker typically is the family CFO. They've got the backup plan, they have the emergency line. They're the one who can always just figure things out. They're the one whose money has everybody's name on it except for their own. And this is where generosity can quietly become self-erasure and self-destructive. Not because the caretaker does not deserve wealth, but because every time wealth begins to accumulate, somebody else's emergency can claim it, right? And you always are feeling like, I can never seem to get ahead. So if you are a caretaker, the question you might want to ask yourself is, am I funding outcomes, or am I funding patterns, right? Because support is not the problem. Open-ended rescue is the problem, that there's not a container for the support that you're giving. Love also needs governance. Here's the third one, the maximizer. The maximizer wants the best move, the best return, the best and the brightest, the best strategy. And that's great. But if you limit yourself to always wanting just the best, you're going to move like from lily pad to lily pad to lily pad to lily pad. And again, you actually have no action, or you have lots of fits and starts. That's also not optimal, right? You can't always have the best. Your gift is your ambition. 1000%. You are very smart, you're very strategic, you're high performing, and you're deeply aware of opportunity and want to make sure that you can have the potential of these opportunities. However, you don't want to leave anything on the table, and you can't always see the board. So the maximizer's risk is pressure. You're always comparing yourself. You have fear of missing out. And so you actually don't build up enough momentum because you keep hopping from one thing to another, right? So it's not a competitive sport. We want you to just make forward motion and be focused so that you can create consistency, because consistency is what's going to build momentum. And that momentum is going to create constant movement to go forward. So what you want to do is ask yourself, am I optimizing for freedom, or am I optimizing for proof or productivity? Those are very different. Proof keeps you performing, right? So take a moment, take a step back, and actually land on something and move that forward, even if it's a small something. The last one is the minimalist strategy. The minimalist strategist wants simplicity. They actually are the opposite of the maximizer. They don't want all these categories. They don't want all these options. It's overwhelming. It's too much. And they really then just want to avoid after that, right? Because they don't want all these complicated dashboards. They want something clean, simple, low friction. That actually is your gift. The minimalist strategist often knows when things are too complicated. So it's great if a minimalist and a maximalist are in a relationship, they can help counterbalance one another. They have strong instincts on what is actually sustainable, but their risk is that they tend to avoid once something feels too boring, too bureaucratic, too emotionally loaded, or too administratively annoying. The minimalist may delay until something becomes urgent, and now there's a penalty or a tax that they pay because of that. An example is like their insurance doesn't get renewed and they've got to pay a fee. They're constantly overdrawn because they don't look at their bank account. They don't know when the debt needs to be paid off, and maybe they overpay and they can't get the money back. These are some things that could happen. The minimalist strategist doesn't want a budget. They want money to stop texting them, right? So if you're a minimalist strategist, your question is, what is the smallest system that I will actually use? Maybe it's being a part of a group. Maybe it's having an accountability buddy, and you all are going to do two things every other week when you meet. Whatever that is, you need to reduce friction so that you can actually make some forward steps. Again, none of these identities are bad. Each one has its own wisdom. But without that, knowing what those are, we can't now begin to build a financial life that works, knowing who we are and that is in alignment with who we are. We're going to wrap up this segment. And so once again, we've talked about your wealth capacity, and we've talked about your wealth identity. And once again, we're not bringing any shame. We're not bringing any jargon, but we're identifying who we are so that we know where is the place that we're starting so that we can choose interventions that will actually work for us. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and come back as we wrap up this episode in the final segment.
Yeah. So they might not waste it.
Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Now, as we wrap up this episode today, we've been doing a culmination or a sort of recap or mid-year level set of all the episodes that we've been doing up until now. And we've been talking about the soul framework, my SOL, like having a money framework for how we think about money and moving through the different cycles to move to a values aligned money. And we've talked about your wealth identity, and we've talked about wealth capacity and how those things are really informed by the stories and the experiences you've had as money, as a child or as a young person with money. What's your relationship to money? Because those stories stay with you throughout your life and help you make decisions. Now, doesn't mean that you have to stay there forever. You have the ability to change, but in order to change, you need to know where to start. Kind of like going to the gym. We're not going to go and if you haven't been to the gym in a year, we're not going to start with 300-pound weights, right? We got to sometimes a lot what you're going to see when you go to the gym, you're going to get an assessment. You're going to be like, where am I? That's all we're doing with your money situation. We want to understand who is the human behind the money? Because once we understand the human, then we can design systems that are actually going to support us and reach our financial goals, whatever those may be. But if you've ever been listening to the show, you know I'm all about activation. We're not just talk here. So the final segment, we're going to get into activation. And since we did not get to do a live Q&A at Pride, I want to give you the 5 rules I wanted every person in the audience to leave with. And if you are listening to this right now, these are for you too. because financial optionality is not built in theory. It is built through rules that you live by, right? This is the system. You're building the system. These aren't rigid rules. These aren't rules to shame you or make you feel bad. They're not, you can never have fun rules. That's not what this is. I mean, these are decision rules, how you're going to make decisions, the kind of rules that help you reduce panic mode, or you're making decisions when your nervous system is not calm, the kind that make your next move more crystal clear, the kind that help you stop negotiating with every impulse, every family request, every sale, every invitation, every emergency, every opportunity, every feeling. Rules create capacity. Rules protect your identity. Rules give your nervous system something to stand 10 toes down on. So, here are the 5 rules of financial optionality. Rule number 1, know your baseline. You cannot build financial freedom if you don't even know what your life costs at a bare minimum. Baseline is your minimal viable month, not your aspirational month, not your luxury month, not everything you want, not everything went wrong and somehow Target got involved month, right? Your minimal viable month. That means your housing, your utilities, your food, and we're not talking about eating out every night food, right? Your transportation, your insurance, life insurance, car insurance, home insurance, your minimal debt payments, right? Maybe you have an outstanding debt, maybe you have a car loan, that's your transportation, and your medical basics. If you have prescriptions, if you have health insurance that you have to pay for, childcare or dependent care costs, if that applies to you. These are the non-negotiable expenses required to keep your life functioning. And be mindful not to convince yourself of things that are not necessary. These are necessary. I know you may feel that streaming service is necessary. Your latte or your triple frap with oat milk is required. Those aren't necessary. I know it feels like it's necessary, but those are not necessary expenses. So, why does the baseline matter? Your baseline matters because it is the number that everything else depends on. Your buffer depends on your baseline. Your brick house depends on your baseline. Your flex fund depends on your baseline. Your debt payoff strategy depends on your baseline. Your investing capacity depends on your baseline. Your ability to leave, to rest, to pivot, to negotiate, to say no depends on your baseline. If you do not know your baseline, every financial decision is fuzzier than it actually needs to be. And fuzziness is what actually creates stress. A lot of people say, I need to budget. Maybe, but before you budget, you need to know what the floor is. What does your life cost before choice enters the room? That is baseline. And this is where each wealth identity may have a different challenge when it comes to the baseline. The builder might overcomplicate the baseline and try to make it perfect. Builder, do not turn this into a 90-minute forensic audit. Okay. Start with the best estimate. Okay. You don't have to know every exact number. The caretaker may exclude the support that they regularly give to others. Maybe you're tithing, right? Maybe it's that niece or nephew that you like to give $20 to. The caretaker, if you send it every month, it is part of your real baseline until you change the rule. The maximizer may judge the number, right? For maximizer, the baseline is not a morality report. It is just data. My minimalist strategist may avoid calculating it altogether because it feels annoying to get into that level of detail. Minimalist, this is the 1-hour task that will save you months of vague stress, and stress that maybe wakes you up in the middle of the night or strikes you in the car while you're driving on your way home, right? Your action for rule number 1 is calculate your baseline this week. One number. your minimal viable month. And again, it's an estimate. This is your floor. We are not judging it. Rule number 2, build a buffer before you build a fantasy. Your first freedom fund is not going to be sexy. That's okay. It's not dramatic. It is not the thing to brag about online. It's going to be boring. We love boring in this moment. It is the money that keeps normal problems from becoming a crisis, like a tire, a copay, whatever that may be, right? So these are the things that are super, super important. And it's okay. It's okay. So we are not trying to do anything with shame. That's not the goal here. The goal is that we just really want to understand what's happening. Okay. So now for the next group of folks, your next rule that you want to be focused on is you really want to understand that you are okay, right? There is nothing about this that is about making you feel shameful. That's not what this is all about. This is really about making sure that you get a handle on things. So, rule number 3 is never have recurring expenses. Like that's actually not the goal. The goal is not to never have any reoccurring expenses. It's that we actually have a handle on what we are actually reoccurring expenses are, right? We want to have not a whole bunch. We don't want to have 10. We actually want to have just a few, and we know what those are, and we don't add another one without removing one. So the one in, one out rule. Rule number 4, love needs boundaries. We love to support people. I love supporting people, but do not create and become someone's whole entire support system or a whole bunch of people's support system. This rule matters because every community, especially for first gen wealth builders, high capacity women, caregivers, we are trained at a very, very young age. If you have it, you should give it. But what if that means that you now can't eat and breathe and live? That's actually not the goal. When you're on a plane, what does they tell you? If something happens, put your mask on first, because you won't be able to put somebody else's mask on if you are falling out in the aisles, right? So, this is really about making sure that your love has boundaries. And so you can say to people, hey, maybe it's a one time thing. Their tire went flat. And you're like, hey, I've got it. I'll cover it. But if their tire went flat this month, next month they don't have money for groceries, then next month they quit their job and they didn't really have a really good reason for quitting their job, right? They just didn't feel like it or they didn't like what the boss said. Well, now you're actually funding a lifestyle. You're not funding them actually, hey, you know what? I just need this one time and now I'm going to save money to be able to now take care of my own emergency. That's having love with governance. So, your action step is to create one support rule. That's all I want you to do. And maybe that rule is I'm not co signing for anybody. I'm not making same day money decisions. Whatever that is for you, that's what I want you to do. Just choose one rule that you're going to put into practice. Now, we've covered a lot today. I hope you've taken away something. Don't forget to hit me up on LinkedIn. You can hit me up on Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. Send me your questions. And just as a gentle reminder, I'm going to be off for the next 4 weeks. So we're going to be putting up some episodes that we think are really going to set you up for success, because as we move into the next 3 months of content, I'm really going to be talking about the L in soul, right? That is leveraging. I'm going to be giving you some really concrete tools to leverage up. So now that we've created some optionality. Now, this is what we're going to be talking about: investing. We're going to be talking about taking up some opportunities that we didn't have before, because now that we've built a stable ground. Thanks so much for listening to Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Enjoy the summer. Take care of yourselves. And I can't wait to see you in 4 weeks when I show you how to do different better.